Content warning. This video delves into sensitive and distressing topics, including child abuse, child exploitation, and related illicit activities. The content may be profoundly unsettling and could evoke strong emotional reactions. If you feel that such subject matter might adversely affect you, I advise against watching this video. If you are experiencing abuse or you need support, Sexual Assault Support Services provides a 24-hour crisis response, as well as information and support services which can be accessed by calling the number on screen. Introduction. In Tasmania, a place celebrated for its rugged landscapes and rich history, the year 2009 etched a story of heartbreak and disbelief. Behind the calm exterior, a dark tale unfolded that would shake the entire community to its core and make the nation reflect. At the heart of this narrative is a vulnerable 12-year-old girl, cast into a world of exploitation and cruelty. Shockingly, over 100 men were individually involved in the rape of this child. Equally horrifying was the revelation that her own mother and her mother's partner were involved, selling this girl for sex to random strangers for unspeakable reasons, all driven by their desire to fuel their drug addiction. The mastermind behind this cruelty was a man named Gary Devine, a man who now walks freely amongst us, a man who spent less than 10 years in prison for masterminding the plan that saw this innocent 12-year-old girl raped over 100 times in just 1 month. But this story isn't just about a horrific crime. As we delve deeper, we'll uncover a series of failures within the system, from allegations that police officers were involved in these sickening crimes, to the controversial decisions made by the Director of Public Prosecution. We'll also shine a light on prominent figures like former Tasmanian MP Terry Martin and his prosecution for not just raping this child, but for organising to have the girl meet at his own address so he could film his disgusting acts. We'll also take a look at the deep-rooted issues within child protection services. So why does a case from 2009 still strike a chord today? Recent cases have highlighted more issues, not just with Tasmania Police but with many of our government bodies. They're glaring in action in child abuse cases like the Griffin matter, or more recently, the revelations about Senior Sergeant Paul Reynolds, the Tasmanian police officer accused of grooming young boys and being in possession of child pornography, have raised eyebrows. Notably, he was eulogised as a hero during a state funeral, despite Tasmania Police being aware of his alleged deeds, which were not disclosed to the public. As we await the findings from the recent Commission of Inquiry into the Tasmanian Government's response to child sexual abuse in institutional settings, it's clear the government and our public bodies are all talk and no action. We must underscore the severity of this case, the inaction of those involved, and the failure of the justice system. This isn't just a forgotten issue from the past, it's a recent issue. It's a chronic problem, and while politicians speak of change, these dire problems persist. This short documentary aims to unravel a traumatic episode that cries out for answers. It's a complex tale of crime, negligence, and community outrage, raising important questions about justice, ethics, and morality in modern Tasmania. As we journey through this story, remember the life of a young girl turned upside down, and a community left grappling with one of its darkest chapters. The aftermath of these revelations left a lasting mark on Tasmania, prompting everyone to question how such a complex web of wrongdoing could exist in a community that's known for its unity. The message is clear. Even in the most idyllic settings, darkness can hide. We must confront it to ensure it never returns. The crime, deception, and betrayal. In 2009, the peaceful community of Tasmania was shaken to its core. A dark secret emerged that shattered communities' trust. At the heart of this story was a 12-year-old girl. Instead of living a carefree childhood, she was caught up in a horrifying situation. An ad taken out in a local newspaper portrayed her as Angela, 18, but behind that name wasn't an adult woman. It was a young, vulnerable 12-year-old child. This cover-up hid the grim truth. A child was being put out there for strangers, her innocence traded for money. The masterminds behind this dark plot, her own mother and her mother's partner Gary Devine. They made the Angela 18 identity, dragging the young girl into a nightmarish experience. And while the ads presented her as an 18-year-old, those who responded contributed to her suffering. How anyone could possibly mistake a 12-year-old child for an 18-year-old adult is something most of us fail to comprehend. Whether they were fooled or just ignored the obvious, their behaviour was flat out wrong. And with a child not being able to give consent, there is no excuse for the rape that this child endured at the hands of these predatory men. Not only was this child pimped out, causing what we can only imagine being severe, long-lasting trauma, the girl would also contract an STI from these encounters. Most likely because, for an additional $50, these men were given the option of not wearing any protection. For 1 whole month, this child was subjected to this abuse. Over 120 men were allegedly linked through phone records to the number advertised in the paper. A rumoured diary added to the mystery surrounding this case. Shows like ABC's Australian Story said this diary logged every transaction and interaction, but its very existence became a hot topic. Some say it's real, a record of the child's terrible experiences, while the police deny ever finding it. If real, it would show just how far the exploitation went. Stories like this remind us to always be alert, even in places that feel safe and tight-knit. The sad truth is, terrible deeds can happen anywhere. We all need to be aware and ready to act so it doesn't happen again. Gary Devine and the victim's mother, architects of a tragedy. Hearing about such terrible acts makes you wonder who could do this. 2 names stood out in this dark story. It was Gary Devine and the young victim's mother. Instead of caring for and protecting a young girl, they brought her endless pain and suffering. Gary Devine wasn't just in the background, he planned it all, making sure each meeting took place without a hitch. If that rumoured diary is real, it might have been Devine's way of tracking the money made off this child's pain. It may have also held crucial evidence as to who the men were who engaged in these disgusting acts. His cold, calculated ways show a man driven by greed and a need to control. But what's even more shocking is the role of the girl's mother. We often see mothers as caregivers and protectors, but here, a mother was deeply involved in this cruel plot. She wasn't just complacent, she actively profited from the abuse of her daughter. It's hard to understand. How could a mum not only let this happen, but help it happen? This betrayal, the breaking of a basic duty to care for your child, adds to the horror of the story. Together, Devine and the mother turned a home in Glenorchy into a place of dark deeds. Their twisted actions angered the whole community. They broke a basic trust kids should have in their parents. As more facts came out, it was clear that they had a plan all along. They turned this evil act into a business. And even after they were caught, the community was left wondering, are there others like Devine out there? And how can we protect the innocent from them? Police connections, doubts and eroded faith. People put their faith in the police, hoping they stand as pillars of justice. But that faith takes a hit when those meant to protect us are suspected of misdeeds. Tasmania faced such a situation when it was revealed that phone numbers of 3 police officers were connected to the number advertised in the paper for these explicit services on offer by pimp Gary Devine. This stirred feelings, ranging from shock to deep concern. One officer tried to brush it off, saying his phone was simply borrowed by a friend to call Devine. This ridiculous excuse was seemingly accepted by police during their investigations, but for many, this explanation was hard to swallow. Was it a made-up excuse? I don't imagine many people, if any, would openly allow their friends to borrow their phone in order to contact a pimp in regard to acquiring the service of a prostitute, let alone a police officer who would surely be much more vigilant about the suspicious circumstances involving a friend needing to borrow his phone for such a service. And the other 2 officers? Their stories remained a mystery. The police never offered any reason why these officers' phone numbers were found in records connected to the advertised number. This left a looming question. Why were their phone numbers associated with the number connected to the prostitution of a child? What could their reason be to contact someone with such a shady reputation, especially on a phone number associated with such unsavoury dealings? Despite these pressing questions, the community never received clear-cut answers. This opacity only added to the growing distrust in police. Like many times before and since, we are simply meant to believe the police when they say there is nothing sinister going on. Assistant Commissioner Scott Tilliard was quick to assure us that no police officer was involved with the young girl, but bigger issues remained. Was their probe thorough enough? Were these officers given a pass because of their badges? Were there underlying biases? The mere thought of officers possibly being involved cast a shadow on the entire force. The community's trust was shaken. People began to believe that some officers might escape scrutiny because of their job. It further strains the bond between the community and their protectors. The importance of trust in the police cannot be overstated. Even a hint of controversy can ripple through the community's trust. It's not just about potential wrongdoing, it's about ensuring that those in authority are held to the same standards as the rest. If those expected to uphold the law are even suspected of crossing it, where does that leave the community's sense of security? Adding to this unease was a statement I found from the report of the Integrity Commission in 2018. That statement read, "In a number of complaints audited in the last few years, the Commission considered that the actions taken were too lenient, that prosecution should have been considered when it was not, or that Tasmania Police had accepted seemingly implausible excuses from its officers." Though I could not find any direct link between this report and the case we are talking about, this report underlined a broader worry, that sometimes the police might not hold themselves fully accountable. If this was still happening in 2018, then how are we supposed to believe that the same thing didn't happen in 2009? To this day, there is still so many unanswered questions about the officers involved, and unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever get those answers from a police force that seems so unwilling to be transparent about the potential wrongdoing of its own officers. Terry Martin's role, a prominent figure's descent into scandal. The shock is always greater when someone in the public eye gets embroiled in controversy. Terry Martin, a former Tasmanian MP, was one such figure. His role in this case didn't just stoke public anger, but also ignited discussions about the responsibilities and potential abuses of those in power. Considering his position as a representative of the people, Martin's involvement was seen as a betrayal on many levels. It raised concerns not just about his personal actions, but about the potential misuse of the trust vested in him due to his office. Martin's involvement in this case went much further than the other 100+ men involved. Not only did Martin engage in the rape of this child on several occasions, he arranged through Gary Devine to have the girl visit him at his own address. During these times, he would not only engage in disgusting sexual acts with the child, he would also film them. During the legal proceedings, Martin's defence was multifaceted. They argued that certain medications had induced hypersexual behaviour in him, further stating that he believed the girl was older than she really was. This defence became a hot topic. Many pondered, how could someone as informed as Martin be so mistaken about a child's age? Even if we took the medication argument into account, it opened up a slew of questions about its legitimacy and implications. The situation posed a bigger societal question. If someone as prominent as Martin could be involved, claiming ignorance of the girl's age, was there a wider problem of societal complacency, or even deliberate ignorance? Martin's sentencing in 2011 to a 10-month wholly suspended jail term drew sharp criticism. The leniency of this judgment, given the gravity of his actions, led many to question the justice system's efficacy. Here we have a man, a prominent public figure, who not only raped a child on multiple occasions, but also filmed himself doing it, yet he would not spend a single day behind bars. The light sentence he received fueled debates about justice, privilege, and whether influential figures receive favourable treatment. Yet an inconsistency stood out. Of all the men believed to have been involved with the girl, only Martin faced legal consequences. This selective targeting raised eyebrows. Was he chosen for prosecution because of his high profile, making him an easier target to show the public that action was being taken? Or did his public profile and the media spotlight force the authorities' hand while others got away? These considerations pointed to a deeper issue, the intricacies of power dynamics and public perception in serving of justice. At the heart of it all remained two haunting questions. Was Martin treated more favourably because of his stature, or was he the only one prosecuted to quiet the public's demands for justice? Such unresolved queries continue to taint this case, casting doubts over Tasmania's legal proceedings. Shortcomings of child protection services. The heartbreaking story of this young girl wasn't just a tale of individual mistakes. It highlighted deeper issues within the system set up to keep Tasmania's children safe. Child protection services, meant to be a safety net for our most vulnerable, suddenly found itself under the magnifying glass of public concern and deep dismay. It's a tough pill to swallow. Even before the terrible events unfolded, this girl was on the radar of child protection. She'd been part of the system multiple times, her welfare supposedly under watch. But she was let down. Many were left wondering, how does a child known to protective services end up in such a dangerous situation without someone stepping in sooner? How was a child supposedly under watch left alone for a month with these monsters who abused her without any fear of being caught? After her ordeal was uncovered, she was quickly placed under protective care, but for many, it felt like too little, too late. The aftermath sparked strong opinions. Could it have been that caseworkers had too much on their plate, making it tough to focus on every child? Was there a breakdown in communication between different departments? Or maybe there was a deeper problem, like a culture of carelessness or insufficient training. There was a loud call from the public to take a hard look at and possibly revamp Tasmania's child protection system. Ideas for improvement varied, from enhancing communication between agencies to putting tighter checks in place. While there was an immediate push to get justice for this young girl, there was also a realisation that the system needed urgently fixing. This tragic incident highlighted that small bureaucratic errors or missteps could lead to heart-wrenching outcomes in the real world. It's easy to look back now and say this could have all been avoided if CPS had done their job properly, but given this was 2009 and not 1959, I don't think it's an unreasonable assumption to make that obviously something clearly went wrong with the care of this child. Many hoped that by shining a light on this dark incident, changes would come, ensuring that no other child in Tasmania would go through the same ordeal. However, as we know from recent cases, we're a long way from saying that this will never happen again. DPP's decision, questions and controversy. The main job of the Director of Public Prosecution is simple: uphold justice. But after the shocking events of this case, the choices and remarks by the DPP, Mr. Tim Ellis, sparked a whirlwind of debate and shock. The stakes were high. The DPP's decisions could change the direction of justice for a 12-year-old who had already suffered so much. But what baffled many was this: with so much evidence and many voices speaking out, why was only one man involved brought to court? Ellis's reason, in his words, the main reason we didn't go after any of the men was that we believed they thought, reasonably, that she was 17 or older. To a lot of people, not just legal minds, this sounded overly simplistic, like saying, if they thought she was of age, then it's okay. Many scratch their heads over this. The difference between a 12-year-old and someone who's 17 or even older is hard to miss. How could all these men honestly think they weren't doing wrong? And what I really struggle to understand is, why did the DPP not bring these men to court and give either a judge or jury the opportunity to decide whether these men were being truthful with their claims? Since when does the DPP have the power to decide on whether someone is innocent or guilty? It's their responsibility to present the evidence in court and let the judge or jury make those decisions. Was there more to this? Whispers began about the police officer's link to Gary Devine by the phone records. If anyone was charged, it might put the whole police force under a negative light. The elephant in the room became, was the choice not to charge any of these men a way to shield the police's reputation? With this backdrop, some legal heads recalled past cases where similar reasons were put to the test in court and didn't hold up. So why was this case treated differently? This episode made many wonder about possible biases in our justice system, how the public sees things versus legal actions, and how law, right and wrong, and public duty all fit together. The fact that this crime, so big and shocking, didn't get a strong legal follow-up highlighted gaps in our justice system. It was a wake-up call, pushing for some soul-searching, changes, and a need to make things right. Communities' deep-felt anguish. As the chilling details of the case became public knowledge, the collective spirit of Tasmania was deeply wounded. Every corner of the community buzzed with discussions, both in person and online, about the gross mistreatment of a young girl and the unsettling implications that authorities may have been involved. Across the state, Tasmanians expressed their profound anger and disappointment. There was an overarching feeling of disbelief. How could such a dark crime receive what seemed like, at most, a lukewarm response from the system? The DPP's Tim Ellis's rationale for not prosecuting the majority of the men involved was heavily critiqued. His stance, that the charges were not filed because the men believed the girl was over 17, was viewed with scepticism and often outright rejection. The conversation soon took a broader scope, targeting concerns around the transparency and accountability of the police force. The rumours regarding the involvement of 3 police officers in the scandal stirred intense debates and speculation. The community eagerly awaited a clear and transparent disclosure about the officers' roles and actions. They wanted to know what would become of these officers, given their alleged ties to such a massive controversy. To many, the lack of clear answers about these officers epitomised the perceived lack of transparency within the Tasmania Police. While the passage of time might dull the immediacy of the emotions, this incident will remain a black mark in Tasmania's history. It underlines the pressing need for societal evolution, heightened transparency, and unflinching accountability. The numerous lingering questions tied to the case highlight the importance of continued public vigilance. They underscore the need to ensure that such incidents remain front and centre in the community's collective consciousness, propelling genuine, lasting change. Conclusion. The events of 2009 in Tasmania are more than just a dark chapter in the state's history. They're a glaring reflection of institutional failings that demand scrutiny. The potential involvement of police officers in the very crimes they're sworn to prevent raises deeply unsettling questions. Why were the community and the public not provided a transparent account of the investigation circumstances? Why should trust be blindly placed in the police's assurances when clear evidence such as phone records linked to the central pimp exist? We are left to grapple with a distressing possibility. Were the very guardians of the law and order complicit in, or at least negligently blind to this tragedy? The decision by the DPP not to prosecute is another searing point of contention. Over 100 men who raped and traumatised a 12-year-old child remain unnamed, uncharged and free in society. The pimp and the child's mother now walk freely among us, and the one man charged didn't face any meaningful consequences for his disgusting crimes. Such a reality not only casts a shadow on the justice system, but also poses an uncomfortable question. How many among us, neighbours or acquaintances, were involved and yet continue to walk freely? The young victim deserved better. She deserved justice, protection, and a system that stands up for her rights and well-being. The public too deserve transparency, accountability, and the assurance that the wrongdoers, regardless of their stature or influence, would be held accountable. The unsettling ambiguity surrounding the ongoing roles of the implicated police officers adds to the distress. Are they still serving, upholding the law while potentially harbouring dark secrets? The thought is disconcerting, to say the least. This story is not just about a singular crime. It's a testament to systemic opacity, questionable decisions, and a potential deliberate attempt to shroud the truth. It is about a community betrayed and a young girl whose life was turned upside down. We must never forget the circumstances surrounding this case and the questions that to this day remain unanswered. If you made it this far, thanks for watching and thanks for the support. If you like the videos, maybe hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Cheers.